Why does an average piece of fiscal policy take so long to have an impact on our own lives? Because it has to make its way through all of these lags that we see right here. So 4 different lags under fiscal policy timing lags. We have the information lag, the recognition lag, the decision lag, and the implementation lag. So let's go ahead, take a closer look at all of these lags right here, see what they entail, and see exactly how long each lag is going to last, and see exactly what problems we can see when all these lags are going to be taken into account for with fiscal policy. So let's go ahead, take a look at these lags in fiscal policy. So lags in fiscal policy. So lags in fiscal policy, take a look at lag number 1, which is going to be the information lag. Information lag. And like the name implies, the information lag tells us that, hey, we don't have data that is up to date or that is current in order for us to make some type of decision just as of yet. So the information lag, this is the time policymakers must wait for economic data, to be collected, processed, reported, and revised. To be collected, processed, reported, and revised. So once again, this information lag, the time policymakers must wait for economic data to be collected, processed, reported, and revised. And as we saw in our previous chapters, it's very expensive for us to get current, up-to-date data, and we're only working with data that's provided with maybe a few months ago, maybe a month ago, maybe a quarter ago, but essentially we're always working with some type of historic data. And once that data is actually provided to us, we may even need to revise it just a little bit as well. We do a lot of revisions with our GDP, with our inflation and unemployment. Essentially here, current data is very, very hard to come by, so we need to go ahead and wait for data to actually be provided to us in order for us to see exactly where we are in the business cycle along those lines. How long does the information lag last us? It's roughly about 1 to 6 months. So here we can put 1 to 6 months for the information lag. So roughly about 1 to 2 quarters of a lag before we can actually get some type of data for us to work with. Lag number 2 is going to be the recognition lag. Recognition. Let me spell this correctly better. So recognition lag. Recognition lag. With the recognition lag, once we have the data, what we want to go ahead and do is see exactly where we are in terms of the business cycle. So time it takes to confirm we are in a recession, expansion, or recovery, and there is a set tertiary definition that also goes along with this. So time it takes to confirm we are in recession. We are in a recession, recovery, expansion, etc., etc. So time it takes to confirm we are in a recession, we are in expansion. One of these days I'm going to learn how to spell expansion or recovery. So essentially, once we actually have the data, where are we in terms of the business cycle? So time it takes to confirm we are in recession, expansion, or recovery. Remember that in order for us to be formally put into a recession, we need 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth. And also in this case, we also want to go ahead and see what policy or politicians may want to do, and they just may want to wait and see what happens during the recognition lag. So here, another tertiary definition that comes along right here, policymakers wait to see what happens. Wait to see what happens. So here, recognition lag, we have this, our second lag right here, and how long is this going to last? It's also going to last us another 1 to 6 months, or another 1 to 2 quarters. Basically, we just want to see where we are in terms of the business cycle, or you just want to wait and see what is going to come next. So we're already working with at least a year's worth of lags for any one piece of fiscal policy to be enacted. Next, once we figure out where we are on the business cycle, we come to the decision lag. Decision lag. And the decision lag, this is exactly where all the politicians and policymakers come together and they have to decide on a particular policy. So time it takes Congress to decide on a policy, once a problem is recognized. Once a problem is recognized. So they begin to see this is where we are in the business cycle. Oh no, we're in a recession. Let's go ahead and enact some type of fiscal policy in order for us to get out of the recession. So here, this is exactly where Congress comes together. They bicker, they compromise with one another in order to come up with a piece of fiscal policy legislation that can go ahead and be sent to the president in order for us to have an impact in our own life. How long does the decision lag last us? In general, on average, the decision lag roughly lasts about 12 months. So 1 calendar year for the decision lag. It takes a very, very long time for these politicians and policymakers to come together, come to some type of agreement and say, yes, this is the path that we're going to go ahead and take. Finally, we go ahead and take a look at the implementation lag. Implementation lag. And the implementation lag basically tells us that, hey, once the president actually signs this piece of fiscal policy, how long is it going to take for it to have an impact in our own life? So here, the time required for fiscal policy to have an impact, in our own life. So, or on the economy, we can say, just in general, on the economy. So implementation lag, the time required for fiscal policy to have an impact on the economy. And this is exactly where the fiscal policy makes its way all the way through all the economic mechanisms and channels. And then we're going to see the impact in our own life, businesses and firms as well. And this is actually the longest lag that we have. And the implementation lag is roughly about 18 to 24 months. So with all of this, how long does it take on average for any one piece of fiscal policy to have an impact on our own lives? When we add up all these months right here, it's roughly about 3 to 4 years. So essentially one presidential term in order for one average piece of fiscal policy to impact our own everyday lives. And there are a few fiscal policies that can get pushed through fairly quickly because the economy needs it. So we saw this with President Obama with the bailout. We saw it with President Trump with the coronavirus pandemic. Essentially here, these are very unique situations and it can essentially push down the decision and implementation lag by quite a bit. But on average, most pieces of fiscal policy have to work its way through all of these particular lags right here. When you add up all these lags, you immediately see that there's going to be sort of an issue with any one piece of fiscal policy. And can you see it? Can you recognize it immediately? And the reason, the sort of major problem that we see with all of this is that once that fiscal policy actually is implemented and has an impact in our own life, we may be in an entirely different part of the business cycle. So the major problem that we have right here is that the economy may already recover by the time fiscal policy impacts are already felt. So economy may already recover by the time fiscal policy impacts are felt. So here, a major problem with all of this is the economy keeps on going through its business cycle. It doesn't care what type of fiscal policy you're going to enact now. So suppose that we are in a recession and we decide to enact a huge stimulus spending package, but the recession isn't as bad as previously thought. But the fiscal policy is already signed into law and it's still going to have an impact in our own lives. So that can actually lead to a huge overheating of the economy. So here we have the policymakers and government officials have to balance out exactly the fiscal policies that they want to enact and exactly what the economy and what the data is actually telling us in this instance. So with all of this, it's imperative that we work very, very quickly when unique situations arise, but we have to realize that there's a very huge lag difference between the fiscal policy and having an impact on the economy itself. And all the lags that we see right here are going to tie in fairly well with public choice theory. So essentially, public choice theory is the economic analysis of public and political decision making, so the intertwinings of economics and politics together. And we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at that in the next video. And that's basically going to show us whether or not politicians really have the best interest in mind for the economy, or do they have the best interest in mind for themselves. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that next.